people around here, especially with this kind of research, and she's doing it right. So make sure you just type in Nicole Sackich, hit that subscribe button on hers as well. Super Chats, once again, we have Ladybug Bigelow, Alaska's greatest athlete, and Kay Kaylee, who's looking stunning tonight. Thank you so much for the Super Chats. I really do appreciate that. And tonight we have Paul Eno. You guys are in for a treat tonight. This guy is a pro. Been doing this a long time, and we got a lot of fun. Black Magic, good to have you in our chat room. Thank you so much. And we're on in 10 seconds here. Good way to support us is hit that subscribe button, hit the Super Chat, go to the SOR Vault store on Facebook, and here we go. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. With more than 50 years in paranormal research, Paul Eno was one of the first investigators of the early 1970s, beginning while he was studying for the priesthood. His early mentors included parapsychology pioneer Dr. Louisa Rhine and John J. Nicola S.J., technical advisor for the film The Exorcist, and legendary first-generation ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren. Paul graduated from 2 seminaries, but was expelled from the graduate-level theology program at the third because of his paranormal work. With less than 2 years to go before ordination, he ended up as an award-winning New England journalist, and he is an author and co-author of 10 books on the paranormal, 2 on history. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, we're going to join the shift in Vancouver with the SOR Newswire and the Thought of the Day. Mr. Paul Eno, it is always a pleasure to have someone of your experience on this show. We're glad to call you a friend of Spaced Out Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Well, you're very welcome, Dave, and thank you for having me.
I'm going to get you to move a little closer to your microphone because all of a sudden you went real quiet on us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, better not. I just got this mic yesterday. It's supposed to be studio quality. So.
Oh.
It could be my voice. I don't know.
There we go. I pumped you up a little bit. I pumped you up.
Okay.
All right. So for you, 50 years plus of research in the paranormal, you know, that seems in today's day and age, putting 50 years into anything almost seems unfathomable now.
Yeah, it's particularly where I started, and it's my opinions and my methods and beliefs and experiences are so different from what they were when I began. You know, it's been quite the journey.
Why this subject, though? Never mind your own personal experiences, but to sit for half a century, the majority of your life, looking into these topics. I mean, why do it? Why fill this passion with the paranormal?
Well, I get that question a lot, particularly from people who are friends of mine who made it to the priesthood. You know, why are you doing this? And he said, well, you know, when you're on your deathbed, your education, your bank account, things like that won't make an awful lot of difference. The questions of, will I be okay? Will my loved ones be okay? What happens in the next stage? You know, those are the questions that are going to concern you. And the paranormal, I think, even more than religion, probes those points. can acquire, if approached properly, a depth that most people never reach. And I think that's the reason. That there's endless fascination. There's no end of things to learn. And answering any question or thinking that you've answered a question raises 10 more questions. I mean, I'm addicted.
I understand that. You know, one of my big beefs with the paranormal has always been about that a lot of these teams, a lot of these groups, they have no idea what they're trying to solve. They're weekend warriors. And I also know that there is an upper echelon of experiencers and researchers out there. I put people like Timothy Renner in that list, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, people of that ilk who will, you know, they may be very quiet on a media front, but realistically they are trying their best to follow every path that opens. And yet these paranormal teams, they're worried about EVPs and you know, spending their rent money on FLIRs and expensive gear rather than paying the rent. It just seems like an anarchic type field.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Dave. We being my son and myself, Ben, he was on last time, I think, but
yes.
He couldn't join us tonight. He and I are sort of, well, not rogues, but we're not joiners. I belong to the Neutral UFO Network because I can access their database, but that's really about it. On one or two occasions, we have worked with, just on a single case when asked very nicely, we've worked with paranormal groups. Okay, now ordinarily, I would say that this is not a good idea. As a matter of fact, at one point, excuse me, I was invited to speak in Florida at that big wooden hotel, the Bellevue Biltmore at the time, in Clearwater, and there was a conference for beginning ghost hunters, and I went against my better judgment. And they asked me during the initial panel, well, Mr. Eno, if you have any word of advice for everybody here to which to begin our program, what would it be? I'd say don't. And 230 people stared at me. I said, you have no idea what you're doing, what you're touching, what you're interacting with, how it works, what it really means, and more than likely you're going to get into trouble or get somebody else into trouble. Now, I've said that on my own show a number of times and everything else, and I've been contacted by several groups that say, you're not being fair. The couple of groups have told me this, use your theories and methods that are getting amazing results, so, cut us a little slack. So I don't know what to say to that, but I think that there are many sincere people out there who are doing it. But the ghost hunting, a term that I hate, by the way, excuse me, is not butterfly collecting or bird watching. It can be extremely dangerous. Now, what do I mean by that? Sorry.
Oh, you got that frog in your throat. It's that time of the year, my friend.
Oh, it is.
That time of the
Allergies
year.
Are terrible here. So, in any case, my point is that you've got people who read a few books by other people who make all the assumptions. Ghosts are spirits of the dead. This or that is demonic. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. UFOs are crashed from other planets. We don't know any such thing. And when I first went into this, I was in the seminary. I was studying for the priesthood. I started really at the age of 17, and with a case in Connecticut in an abandoned village where there are all sorts of fascinating things going on. And my assumption was that ghosts, maybe their souls in purgatory. That's where I started out. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, there was an old Roman Catholic doctrine that if you're not quite bad enough to go to hell, not quite good enough to go to heaven, you go to purgatory, where you are purged, hence the name, for a certain period of time, and then you can go to heaven. All right, I don't know really theologically what basis that has, but people believed it, and I still do. Now, that was my assumption. However, as we walked into this very first case, we being a bunch of other seminary students and myself, and a local guide, a fellow who was a historian, we could hear the sounds of daily life. We could hear, ox carts. We could hear dogs barking, cows mooing, all sorts of farm implements banging together as if it was a normal day in the life of, someone else. And as the time passed, several days, we began to experience more and more of this stuff. And I got the impression these people don't seem to be dead at all, never mind being in purgatory. So I think maybe a revision of thought is required here. And there were also a number of things that happened that disconcerted me beyond any of the phenomena we were witnessing. For example, on the first night, this is in 1971, actually August of 71, we were standing above Nightingale Brook in Pomfret, Connecticut, in this wooded area that had been a farm and a village at one point, and there had even been a mill. So we heard the laughter of children in a large group, and they were moving up, and we couldn't see them, moving up and down the brook in a very unnatural manner, as if they were in a car speeding at about 60 miles an hour, or that's American mileage, but fast in any case. And we couldn't see them, and we attempted, I suppose that this is about a little bit of early EVP, electronic voice phenomena in reverse. We had a cassette tape recorder, high tech for the time, and we attempted to record it, and it wouldn't record. We could hear everything else, but not that. But 6 of us heard these voices. I got the distinct impression, the certainty, as a matter of fact, that I knew some of these children. This one was a Randall. This one was a Prescott. I had no explanation for that. It disconcerted me because any sort of thing that was mediumistic or psychic even was against the Roman Catholic idea. And I never said anything to anybody about it for many years. So be that as it may, I got the impression that maybe we're dealing more with time than we were with death. And since then, it's been a journey even far beyond time, even far beyond the concepts that we have. So going back to the modern age here and speaking at this conference, I was astounded by the assumptions that we make. I questioned every one of them. And that's we're generally not invited to speak at conferences like that, as opposed to UFO conferences where we're welcome, because we're bad for business. We question all the old ideas. And there are exceptions to that. There are a lot of people coming around to this point of view, but anyway, that's pretty much how I got started. And it was really going back, and just to get to the root of your original question, Dave, it was, and you can imagine it took a long time for me to be able to talk about this, but I was 7 years old and a little kid in East Hartford, Connecticut, cold winter day, January 8th, 1961. And I was witness to my father's suicide. And I was in a strict Roman Catholic school at the time. My father was Protestant, my mother was Roman Catholic. My brother was already studying for the priesthood. He'd be ordained in another 2 years. And I was in a school where the nuns would teach you if you ate a hot dog on Friday or did something like commit suicide, you would go straight to hell. And naturally, this upset me. My father was a wonderful man. He had heart issues, was unable to work at a time when that was very unusual for a man. And I had the Sisters of Mercy, or alleged mercy, and they were either saints or potential axe murderers, in my opinion. But I think I had my second grade teacher, Sister Mary Joel, who was a saint. And she got me through all this by saying in so many words, well, God is kind of bigger than all that. And that got me through. And I always wondered, where is my father? What happened to him, And I had to answer that question. So when I got into the seminary myself at the age of 14, when you could still do that, I was that was always in the back of my mind. And I began to wonder about it as I got older, and I found one lonely book in the seminary library, Herbert Thurston's Ghosts and Poltergeists, considered a classic. But they were cases, pretty much reports, most of which he had not seen himself, but it gave me a lot of ideas to go on, and then I landed on the purgatory thing. Now, one of the interesting sidelights to that was in 1972, I wrote this case, I wrote a report on this case, the one I just mentioned with all the sounds and all this business in northeast Connecticut. and it fell into the hands of Lorraine Warren, Ed Lorraine Warren of Conjuring fame. And Lorraine thought this poltergeist, I should say this purgatory thing was a fabulous idea. So she got in touch with me, and that's how I met Lorraine Warren. I went down to their house to meet them actually late in '72, and actually they were just working on this Conjuring case in Rhode Island, finishing it up, and it was a matter of just enjoying Lorraine's cooking and getting to know them a bit, and but I almost couldn't. I hesitated to tell them, that right away. My first impression of this case was that there was nothing to do with purgatory, but they thought the idea was great, and so the story goes on from there. But that's essentially how I got started.
In regards to the way that you got started and how everything has kind of gone from then, from the beginning to end, how, in your opinion, never mind the technology or the internet, but how has the subject of the paranormal changed for the good or for the bad?
Well, maybe both in both directions. I don't know. In the beginning, nobody was really doing this. There were the Warrens, Hans Holzer, later on Richard Sennett, people of that quality, and it was not normal for people to have a hobby of what's today known as ghost hunting, although that term originated with Harry Price in the late 19th century. But there was an idea that you were a little bit crazy when you did this, and of course the seminary faculty, when they found out about this, were not too pleased. But I managed to skate through that first graduation there and went on to the college level seminary, and I ended up in the last 2 years of that. The first 2 years of the major seminary was called, when you're studying philosophy, a very sympathetic faculty on this. So that was unusual, but there was a lot of skepticism around about anybody who'd be doing this, and you didn't generally talk about it. On the other hand, it was in the back of everyone's minds. I remember as a kid, our home was kind of a center, a social center for many people in our Roman Catholic parish to stop by after church. And I would sit there as a little kid and I'd listen. And every once in a while, something strange would have happened to someone, and they'd kind of get talking about it, and you could hear a pin drop. Everybody was interested. Nobody wanted to say they believed it, but everybody was interested. As time went by, I remember one time I would, if the Warrens were lecturing nearby, I'd very often go and help them out. And I went one time to Central Connecticut. It was Manchester Community College in Connecticut outside Hartford. And I showed up in exactly the same clothes as Ed did. Total coincidence. People said, was that some kind of uniform? And then today I look back on that and think, today the groups all wear T-shirts and all this kind of thing. But as time went by,
I hate that. By the way, I hate.
Oh, it's terrible. But it was. We laughed about it, but it was ridiculous. So as time went by, it would become more mainstream, I guess, and I think certainly the advent of cable television and reality shows kind of brought it to again into the mainstream. But I would look back on our equipment that we had, such as it was. We had a couple of notepads. Kodak Instamatic cameras, which were high-tech for the time. You didn't have to wind the film. You just threw in a cartridge. The cassette tape recorders and a couple of other things, that really didn't amount to much. And today, as time went by, of course, now you have engineers' tools and all this business, the FLIRs. I first noticed that things were becoming more acceptable, this field, when I was... the editor, after I was thrown out of the seminary in 1977, and what else do we have? The only other thing I could do was write. So by 79, I'd shoehorned my way into journalism. Never took a journalism course in my life, and since then I've lectured at journalism schools. And I ended up the editor of a small paper in Rhode Island. And somehow the word got out that I was doing this. I hadn't really written anything yet. And people would come to me and say, I know you don't want to really talk about this, but I have this issue with that. And so that's how I kept cases coming in. I just kept going, but it was all very much on the sly. Ed Warren, on the other hand, the first thing he'd do was call the press, so that's the last thing I would do. So it became seemingly more mainstream, particularly as the cable TV era began. Then people began to bring in the equipment, and we live in a society, Dave, that's drunk with technology. we're impressed by any sort of technology that seems to be pointing us to the future. So in came the EMF meters, the electromagnetic field meters, and things, which may or may not indicate anything. I first used one of those in a case while I was still editor of that paper. There was they weren't digital yet. There was one with a little meter on it, and a needle, and a kind of just a face with that, and there wasn't any negative range. And an engineer friend of mine said, you know, take this with you because I was beginning to talk about electromagnetic fields and geotechnic factors in this, because by the end of the 70s, I was running into people who were seeing ghosts of themselves, people who were seeing ghosts of people who hadn't died yet, people who were seeing the supposedly the same ghost in several different places at the same time. And I said that this really goes way beyond the old 19th century spiritualist ideas, which just weren't good enough. Why were these phenomena so physical? So I was looking for more technology that might point us in the direction of something that was more scientific rather than superstitious. So I took this early first generation or second generation EMF meter with me to a house where something was coming down the hall toward me. You could feel the electrical tingle like insects on your skin. And it did certainly pick up an electromagnetic field, which of course is that field surrounds an electrical current. That's what it is. And the question is, where's the current coming from? Could be the wall, could be anywhere. But in this case, this thing came right up to me, and the needle dropped to zero. And I said, well, what good is this? It dropped to zero. Why would it do that? And went past me. And eventually, I began to wonder, maybe the instrument wasn't good enough. And when the digital ones came out, it was fascinating because I noticed that they went into the negative range, and in cases like this, they would go into the negative range, which meant the field on the polarity on the field is reversed. And in my opinion, energy is coming and going from what I was beginning to think of as parallel realities, parallel worlds. And this suggested itself at the end of the 70s when what I say, all these things that were sort of ghostly but outside the box were coming to my attention. People were seeing buildings that weren't there the day before, things of this kind. And so I thought that here was the key, in a way, to getting into the parallel world ideas, the multiple worlds interpretation of quantum physics, etc., as a possible explanation for the paranormal. So as I was evolving, apparently so was the perception. And so we get to today, where if you sit on the street corner in any city and throw pebbles, you're going to hit 10 people who are ghost hunters or people who think they are. And it's become a hobby. I think it's not a good idea. And I think these shows very often about this subject have led people into the field, which I think is very destructive and possibly dangerous, because people come to me, these people were in my house, they messed it up. We've had to go in. Shane Searway, one of our gang and one of our co-hosts on the show.
Very good guy.
Tremendous. One of a kind. And people of that kind have had to go in and straighten things out.
Yeah.
And again, we take a whole different approach. So I think it's very much accepted today, but that might not be good.
Yeah, we only got about 15 seconds, so I'm going to cut you off right there. A good friend of mine, Matt Lay, who was just on this show a week ago with Science Bob, he just sent me a recording today of a lady out of the United States absolutely terrified because this ghost hunting team that wants money to clear her house says she is being followed and attacked by demons. And that's exactly what you're talking about. This isn't for the faint of heart. Too many people do it. Paul Eno, our guest tonight, radio show host, journalist, paranormal researcher the last 50-plus years. We are in for a treat tonight on the Mighty SOR. Stay tuned. Second half hour is next. All right, we're clear, man.
Okay. Sorry to prattle on.
Oh, no, it's great. I apologize if you heard some bumping. My little guy, who was supposed to be in bed an hour ago, decided to use my floor as a trampoline up above. I don't know why.
Oh, I thought that was my son above. Because he stays up late. He's in his 30s, but he works from home now, and it's he sometimes will rock in the chair, and I'll hear that. So I didn't know it was your son.
No,
that's funny.
That was my boy.
It's when it's good to live in the Eastern time zone.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Oh, well, he seems to have calmed down now. But is what it is. When I pumped up your audio, I pumped it up a little too much, so I guess it was kind of coming out a little muffled on the recording, so I do apologize about that. If you play back and you're like, God, I sound terrible for the first couple of minutes, that's Dave's fault. 100%.
That's all right.
That's Dave's fault.
Yeah.
So, you know how it is when you're producer and host at the same time.
Oh yes, I could never do that.
Mm-hmm.
Ben is always the producer these days, or our station manager will do it.
Yeah. So, speaking of radio, like in Vancouver, my old station had a purging today.
Oh.
Yeah.
What happened?
My best friend, he got hired. I was the best man at his wedding. He got hired I think it was about 6 months after I did, and he was still there as one of the managing editors. He got the can. They canned it. Put it this way, everybody in their 50s today got canned.
That's not even legal, is it?
Oh, up here they make excuses. They pay you out for a year.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, I work for myself. I have for the last 30 years at home, and because I'm still a working journalist, but I'm kind of self-employed in the media business. So,
yeah.
So the lockdowns were all the same to me.
Yes, I know the feeling, man. I know the feeling. Except my damn daytime job. I love it. I absolutely love it. I work for a gem of a human being, just a gem of a human being. But gets in the way of the woo. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I consider all this part of my work as a journalist. I also write about history and housing affairs. I run a magazine on for contractors, residential building industry, that kind of thing. So, it's good. It's gangbusters right now. Absolutely gangbusters. I'm running 40 pages, and I don't have enough room for the ads. I'm going to have to increase the size of it.
That's not a bad problem to have.
No. It's good. It's good. And, they're doing all the COVID stuff and everything's online, but, they're getting it done. Everybody was home, and I'm sure it's the same thing in Canada, too. Everybody, because I have a lot of family in Canada that tell me the same thing. They're home, and there's what a crummy-looking bathroom this is. Or, what an awful pink color. So they're having, and people are bailing from the cities, at least in this country.
Here
and
too.
They're coming out. Yeah.
Here, too.
And Ben and his wife just bought a new house in Massachusetts, about 12 miles from here. And they paid all kinds of crazy money. And I said, wow. They said, that's a bargain. Greater Boston, you got to be kidding. So I don't know. We bought this house in 1996, and it was reasonable. But they get in under the wire. The real estate prices are going to Pluto because everybody wants out of the urban areas, or at least center urban areas. So anyway, I'm a busy guy.
Yeah, I totally get you. I totally get you.
So as they say with the history and the paranormal and the housing, if you're a harried, overregulated contractor working in a historic haunted house, I'm your guy.
Well, I have my realtor buddy here up where I live. I told him, I said, look, I'm not going to be ready for this year, and maybe not even next. I said, but the following year, I said, I want you to go out and find me the most haunted piece of property with a house on it in our area. And he kind of laughs at me. He goes, why? And I said, you know what I'm into. And he goes, I know what you're doing. I said, what's that? He goes, you want to build you want a house that you can have a haunted bed and breakfast, don't you? And I'm like, yeah.
Was he right?
Oh yeah, he was right. Yeah.
Are you to Chilliwack at all?
Am I near Chilliwack?
Yeah.
No, I am. Okay, so Highway 1, you drive through Chilliwack, you go to Hope, where they filmed First Blood.
Okay.
And then you would hang continue on to Highway 1, which eventually bleeds into Highway 97. making their way up. So I'm about 3.5 hours from Chilliwack.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on, my friend. We're on in like 5 seconds. Hey, big thank you to Ladybug Bigelow, Alaska's greatest athlete, and Kay Cayley for the super chats. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we continue our paranormal conversation with Paul Eno, longtime journalist, 50-plus year researcher in the phenomena. My friend, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Dave.
I want to ask you this, because you've been doing this a long time. Out of all the topics that we cover, ghosts, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, consciousness, whatever it may be, what are maybe the 1, 2, or 3 topics that we are not discussing that really, really need more advancement, in your opinion?
Well, perhaps that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. You mentioned consciousness. Perhaps it's not the topics that you're discussing where there's anything lacking. It's perhaps the unification of the topics, what we call a pan-paranormal approach. The consciousness, of course, being the basis of it. We have run into, just to answer your question, we have run into things that don't even have names yet in areas that we call flap areas. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, John Keel, the closest thing I can think of is John Keel of Mothman fame and great man, referred to window areas where all sorts of phenomena were going on that traditionally are not related. Well, that's what we mean by flap areas. And I think that perhaps more discussion of the process that's behind all paranormal phenomena, or most of them, at least in our opinion, ought to be maybe looked at more closely on shows such as yours. They don't stand in isolation, ghosts, UFOs, and Bigfoot. Everybody used to, that's another thing that's changed, to answer your last question before the break, was that there's more of an awareness that these things, I think, are more related. We used to say, well, UFOs have nothing to do with ghosts, so how could they? Or Bigfoot has nothing to do with UFOs. And that sort of thing, but that's kind of falling away now, and there is a sense of the unity of these things. Probably an example of the things that have no names, the Litchfield Triangle case in Connecticut that we've been working on since 2005. It was one of Ben's first cases, along with the haunted policeman of Vermont, as we call it. And the farther we would get into these things, the more we would discover. At this point, that case covers about 330 square miles and goes into the Hudson Valley and down to the Connecticut shoreline and Long Island Sound, and to the borders of New York City. And there, in the house where we began in 2005, because we spent years on cases, obviously, there were things seen such as legs hanging from a ceiling, walking on a surface that was not present in our world. The entire family saw this. There were very tall beings we have come to call the clerics, or that's Ben's name for them, because they're usually wearing hoods. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. There were boxy structures not dancing, but jumping by the windows outside. I mean, I've never heard of descriptions of these in any of the general paranormal literature. So there are plenty of things that have no names that ought to be discussed, as part of the ongoing studies of flap areas, where all the other things are taking place. And the thing is, Dave, seeing all these things over the years has made me question the labels that we put on things. Okay, ghost. Okay, by definition, spirit of somebody who's dead. It's been forever since I believed that. I don't think that's good enough. I don't think it carries any water. But we assume that it's true. UFOs assumed to be craft from other planets. Maybe, could be. But not necessarily. There are all sorts of other possibilities, including UFOs in some cases being living things, and I could go on and on. But so it's perhaps the way we discuss the topics. There are a number of, as I say, things that don't even have names. We could be discussing that. That's important, but also discussing the old topics in new ways that have been suggested by this expanded view. What we call it the progressive approach to the paranormal. No political overtones intended, but a new way of looking at things that really will transform not only our understanding of the paranormal, such as it is, but our understanding of ourselves. So I think there's a lot that needs to be discussed.
Okay, so some of these creatures that are out there, do you believe they are a part of some sort of realm, whether it's paranormal or cryptid, even alien?
Well, I don't know if the question, with all due respect, is broad enough. Maybe we can't answer it as broadly as it deserves. There is a photograph that we, matter of fact, just reproduced in my last book, but it was taken in this Litchfield, Connecticut Triangle area. There had been a number of break-ins in homes in this particular vicinity, and a family installed security cameras in their home. Well, one day they were out, and the camera captured the break-ins. Nothing was stolen. It was just evidence of break-in. But on the one bit of footage from the kitchen showed a creature such as I've never seen before standing over the sink. It's been interpreted as a reptilian or some other thing, or an alligator or something of this kind, and it's just standing there. And I mean, what this was, I don't know. But again, there had been break-ins, and they never found out anything more about it, and finally they ended. But there is this photograph, and this is something that has really no name yet. I think that we've got issues with the processes behind the paranormal. And again, John Keel kind of touched on that. Certainly, Jacques Vallée was a pioneer in this idea that we're dealing with different worlds. Now, in quantum mechanics, you've got the theory of the multiple worlds theory, the Everett's theory from 1956, that you have not just one world, but many parallel worlds all next to each other. This is not as simple as it seems, because they seem to interact. And the farther you get outside of a world family, that's our term, the more the laws of physics are likely to be different. Therefore, the kinds of inhabitants are likely to be different. Outcomes may be different as well. But there are two keys with quantum mechanics, in this interpretation anyway. One is that time is all simultaneous. There is no past, there is no future. As such, it's all simultaneous. We just experience it this way. Einstein's special theory of relativity, 1952, essentially leads us right into that. And then there's the idea that all outcomes, all possibilities do exist somewhere or somewhen in the multiverse. And we see evidence of this everywhere. Now, again, my background is in theology and philosophy. I'm not a scientist. But we've had eminent scientists on our show, including Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, everybody knows his name, agreeing with us largely that this is actually happening. What is between these worlds? What keeps them in balance or separated and limits the interaction? They're called by physicists membranes, or just brains, B-R-A-N-E-S. Well, what do these things do? Well, they seem to be plasma charged, and plasma is just electrified air molecules. They keep the magnetism in balance, that keep us from just drifting in and out of totally different parallel worlds at the same time. Although we do proceed through world families during our entire day. What would you see on the other side of that brain? You might see someone even another version of yourself. You might, these people seeing ghosts of themselves, and people who are simply going about their daily lives, as in this first case I was describing earlier. And perhaps that's what's happening. How would you see them if you could see them? You'd see them as glowing figures in some cases, dark figures, depending on the conditions. You'd see them as ghosts. Now, it's very interesting that we've had case after case after case where the ghosts, quote unquote, were afraid of us because they thought we were ghosts haunting them. They could see us in just the way I described, just as we could see them, under certain circumstances. We had a case in Pennsylvania, and I did rather, in 2004, that's the year before Ben joined me, and King of Prussia outside Philadelphia, and there were two young girls, two students who were sharing an apartment, and they said they were being haunted. There were ghosts, and there was a demon, they said. This demon would come in and would pull their hair, and they could hear it verbally attacking them and this sort of thing. Well, when we started to unravel this, and the ghosts haunting them, in our opinion, were people who were occupying the same space in a different parallel world with very similar laws of physics. They thought the girls were ghosts haunting them. Out in the yard, some violent act was being committed, perhaps a murder, and a parasite, folklore calls them demons, a parasite was feeding upon that. When it couldn't get enough to eat, it would come into the house and bother the girls and the so-called ghosts who were. So it was a three-ring circus here, where the parasite acting, which is a multiversal creature, we've come to believe, operating in several different worlds at the same time. So as you can see, this is a lot more complex and a lot less simple than just spirits of the dead. The entire notion of spirits is a problem for us because physicists have told us that a fully self-contained personality, a person cannot be fully contained in a spirit because of the laws of physics in our world. Now, other worlds, the laws of physics may allow that, but not here. So I look back over my years after I heard that, and I talked about the phantom ox cart driver in Connecticut and all the different things that the poltergeist attack in Bridgeport, 1974, and all the physicality behind that. It just made sense. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think we're dealing with something that's a lot more fascinating and a lot scarier and a lot deeper than the old ideas would have us believe. I think ghosts are far more than any kind of spirit. I think they're neighbors in many cases, and some of the neighbors are not too pleasant. So a lot of cases to back that up, in our opinion.
Paul, what's your idea or thoughts on portals? This is the one that I've been hung up on for the last number of months, and I'll blame David Politis for that. Because I really firmly believe that in some way, shape, or form that we are seeing a lot of these people who go missing. I think what's happening, and it's just my opinion, that they are walking into these portals, and at the other end of that portal, everything is normal for them, but on this side, they're gone, potentially for good.
I think you may be right, and we have examples of that. Rather than portals, we invented terms to describe things like this as interworld overwashes, overlaps, and intersect points. We believe that we got a video of one of these in real life from May of 2019, and it's a UFO. Actually, it was witnessed by we have an informal kind of gang. We're all great friends with different talents and different abilities in this field. Of course, Shane Searway was with us this day. This is in the Pennsylvania Triangle, as we call it. Also, we had Alexander Pedikov, the filmmaker, Charles Credo from Seacoast Saucers of New England, and the interviewer behind the Galileo interviews. And we also had, we were supposed to have Mark D'Antonio, and Mark was from MUFON, and Mark will suffer terrible anguish for the rest of his life because he had to bow out at the last minute, and he wasn't there to see this. And a couple of local people were with us. And it was, I guess, Alexander and Shana saw it first. And what's that in the sky? Crystal clear night. And the video of this, by the way, is on our Facebook page, Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. That's our show. And it's the first video on that page. So people can go look at it. And it just came out behind the trees. I had my brand new NV900 Bestgarter infrared binoculars with me. Never been used before. So I thought the bloody thing paid for itself right then and there. And moving across the sky, and there was an object that came out of the bottom of it, went around to the top, and it to me, and the others weren't sure about this, but to me, this was a perfect artist's rendition of a white hole in space, which could very well be a portal, as we say, or an intersect point. I believe it was an intersect point, and whatever this object was, whether it be a craft or a living thing or whatever, was using it for travel between one world and another. It moved across the sky. As I said, it's all in the video. And then it began either to change shape or to change direction. And we couldn't see it. The object went back in. So maybe I'm making it fit my theories, but I think this was an example of an actual video of a portal or intersect point moving through the sky. Because this area is full of this. Bigfoot comes and goes. I saw that on one occasion with my own eyes. There were all kinds of UFO activity, military activity. Bigfoot, there are shadow people. People have ghostly problems in their homes. Every year we have, except this one, of course, because of the COVID, every year we have a neighborhood meeting. Over the years, it's grown so big that we've had to go to a restaurant because nobody's home is big enough. People come, they'll be interviewed on camera. Alexander Petikoff and Chuck Credo got an interview as we were down there 2 years ago with a family of 3 generations, all recounting their Bigfoot and UFO experiences. It's a flap area. Again, the First Nations would call them thin places, where the boundaries between the worlds are very, very thin. Things come and go all the time. So that's our most active case right now, and because and we have a growing number of spies, as it were, all over the area, and we use our show for that. We have reporters, and they recruit people, and we keep a tight rein on it. But a lot of them don't know each other, so there's no suggestibility, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just an example, and I think that portals are real. They move. One of our cases, we had to sort of go into some sort of like a meditative state. Ben's very good at that, and move portals out of the house so that things would try to get back to normal. And it lasted for a while, but then they came back in, probably because of the geotechnics of the site. And then we also have to deal with the Bouget anomaly, but that's not, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
What is the Bouget anomaly? You can't drop something like that and then just
okay.
Say, oh, well, we're not going to talk about it because we don't know. Well, no, you got to go with it now.
Yeah, all right.
We got 5 minutes before we got to go to break at the top of the hour.
Okay. Well, early on, we started working with geologists and soil engineers, people of this kind, along with anybody else. Well, the Bouget anomaly is something that reverses the logic when it comes to gravity. You expect that you go down, for example, into a river valley, you'd be getting closer to the center of the earth, and you'd have increased gravity. Where the Bouget anomaly is present, that's not the case. The opposite is the case. The farther you walk down toward the center of the earth, as it were, toward a valley, say, gravity gets a little bit lighter. And it can be measured. And it's a known scientific principle, and it's used to find oil and gas deposits because they believe that the anomaly is created, the gravitational anomaly is created by certain elements in the soil. Well, we did some parallel work on this, and it seems that every major flap area we've worked with has a big-time Bouget anomaly present right in its center. In Connecticut, the greatest Bouget anomaly in Connecticut is right there in the Litchfield County area where this flap area is taking place in that vicinity, the big one, 330 square miles. And why could this be? Well, what did Einstein say about gravity? It bends space and time. And maybe this isn't enough to do that. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I, for one, don't believe in coincidence. And so we're doing a lot of parallel work now on the Bouget anomaly and what it may be doing to people and to even animals and portals and intersect points in areas like this. It could be a key factor.
It really could. I mean, in regards to the anomaly itself, where do you think these are coming from? Are they energy portals that are popping up on Earth? Does it go further back to that, to maybe a religious type connection? How do you feel about how it's starting?
Well, the Bouger thing is strictly geotechnic. I mean, it's I don't think it's multidimensional, but these things all affect the parallel realities and the parallel worlds and the membranes and all these interactivities. I think certainly that these things, again, as I say, move. I think the presence of people who interact with them, the presence of high water tables, clay soils, all have to do with where these portals, if you want to call them, do manifest. These stone circles in England, for example, some of them are still charged, others are not. I stood in the Score Hill Stone Circle in Devonshire back in 1989, and I saw a line of people come out from behind a tor, as they call the big bunch of rocks you have on the moors. And it was a Wednesday afternoon in March. It was kind of rainy. Why people would be out horseback riding? Some people were on foot. Some people. This is maybe 100 yards away, and I don't know what was it, a time thing? Others are dead. Other circles. So these things move within these active flap areas, and certainly all over the planet. They talked a lot about ley lines. I mean, I take that with kind of a grain of salt. I think there's more to it. So I think, I mean, it's all these factors are the ducks that are lined up in a row to make these things happen. And if somebody comes in there and experiences it, they participated in it as well. A lot of factors. So, I mean, I think it's today's paranormal is tomorrow's science, Dave.
And I think that's a good place to kind of go into hour number 2, because right now we have a number of scientists who are starting to look into this. Some big names like Dr. Eben Alexander at Harvard, after his own personal near-death experience. He didn't believe in any of this crap until that happened. We have people like Science Bob McGuire coming out of Virginia Tech University, who is a big believer in the UFO phenomena. We see a lot of people who are coming forward saying, look, this is an area of study that science can no longer refrain from looking into. Yet it still has so many detractors. As we got about 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Fewer and fewer detractors, but this is an example of this becoming more accepted. And I didn't mean to imply that it's only becoming more accepted by ghost hunter types. It's becoming more accepted by mainstream scientists. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
How do we do that, though? How do we get mainstream science on board with this? Does the groups that are out there, that 40 plus and over type of scientists, have to retire or die out, lack of a better term, in order to finally get that younger generation, which seems more believing?
Well, that's what Max Planck said, the great physicist. Those with the new ideas don't convince those with the old ideas. The ones with the old ideas die, and the only ones left are the ones with the new ideas. So rather grim, but that might be the case.
Wow. It sucks that it gets that way, don't you think?
I know. Well, hopefully there will be a few people like us who are a little bit older who accept new ideas.
Well, we'll soon see. In hour 2 here with Paul Eno coming up here on Spaced Out Radio. Wherever you guys want to go. That's kind of the way we take a look at things here. You know, why stress out? We're having a good conversation. Everything paranormal, everything supernatural, everything that deals with these topics that we absolutely love. Paul is an experienced investigator, over 50 years in the paranormal field. Research, author, radio host, journalist. How many hats do you wear, Paul? I have no idea. We'll find out when we come back on Spaced Out Radio with the second hour of tonight's show. We'll be right back. All right, my friend, we're clear. I'm just going to run my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to run to the, you know what?
Yep.
Stories of the day.
I'll be back. I'll turn my camera on so that way you can see.
Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best-rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Tribe and Tribe Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little different. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Tribe Charities, just go to tribecharities.org/donate.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows
Uncle Paul.
covering UFOs, ghosts, strange...
How you doing?
You turn on your camera, we can at least look at each other's pretty faces.
Hold on, let me, if you see me looking that way, that's the YouTube camera. You're over here.
Okay. I say we can at least see each other's pretty faces.
Oh, your beard is looking gorgeous.
Oh, look at you! I just trimmed it today. Yours looks really Olympic.
Yeah, it's getting like there. It's getting mighty. It's getting mighty.
It is.
It's what I'm going for is the mighty look. I'm thinking next half hour, let's get into evidence.
Sure.
I'm curious about your opinion with evidence because in today's, I'll get into it when we're there.
All right.
I'll get into it. Oh, Fapster, thank you again for the wonderful super chat, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you, brother. And Bob, yes, we do need an SOR party at the Moose, and since you're in Vancouver, as soon as this COVID shit ends, I will come down and we'll have an SOR party at the Moose. I got some pull around there. Miskatonic University?
Oh, yeah, H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. He was a cousin of ours.
Oh, really? This listener, Sovereign Cosmic Wildman at Spaced Out Radio. I farted. Hi, Sovereign. So did I. Why not?
Deep conversation.
Why not? All right, my friend. Hold on tight, okay? Here we go. Thank you to Fabster, Ladybug Bigelow, and Kay Haley for the super chats. Don't forget our store on Facebook, the SOR Vault. Hit our page and give it a like. Here we go.
You are listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for tuning us on in. My name is Dave Scott. We really appreciate you taking the time. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Palafit. Palafit is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with legendary researcher Paul Eno. He's out of New England. He's got a great beard, fantastic new microphone, and, of course, he's been doing this for over 50 years. He's a journalist, he's a researcher, he's an author, and we're lucky to have him. We really are. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. You're very kind.
I got to ask you about evidence. In today's day and age, since social media took over, my friend, we have seen an influx of hoaxing videos, CGI videos over the last decade that have really put a real kibosh on real evidence being collected and put out to the market for people who have intrigue to actually see and to study upon. How do we trust evidence these days, in your opinion?
Oh, boy, I couldn't agree more, Dave. It's a slippery slope. But evidence, in the end, it's a matter of, for the true believer, no evidence is required. For the unbeliever, no evidence is ever enough. But we have to define what we mean by evidence. What constitutes evidence. We live in a world which is pretty much governed, and rightly so, by the scientific method, and which is based essentially on the assumption of the truth of a materialist paradigm. Everything is made up of matter and the interaction between it and other matter, which you might call energy, but it's all essentially the same thing. Well, that is pretty much being blown out of the water by quantum mechanics, and so it's very dangerous as far as what we're going to use as evidence, in the sense that, if we fall off the wagon into the abyss, there is no disciplined thinking, peer review, things of this kind. So how do we decide what's evidence and what isn't? Before we leave the realm of the scientific method, there are issues with the science. And the science is only as good as scientists. And scientists, all too often, unfortunately, are not these paragons of selflessness, working long hours in lab coats, things of this kind, they are all too often governed by politics, who gets the grant money, who's giving you the grant money in the sense of, what kind of outcome do they want. I'm not saying everybody's dishonest. I'm just saying they're human. So this can be a problem. But as far as new definitions of evidence, I think that's something we have to attempt to strive for. Now, for all these years, and that's another thing that's changed in 50 years of my work in this field, photography was considered evidence, but now it can be very easily faked. And even then, people say, well, this is something else. This is a reflection and everything. And most of the time, they'd be right. It's just photography was not the panacea that it was thought to be as far as evidence is concerned. One of the issues, too, is that you did not have, except starting with Louisa and Joseph B. Rhine, Louisa Rhine being one of my mentors at Duke University, the parapsychology lab. They attempted to, even psychology was not well accepted as a science in those days. They started in the 1930s, and they attempted to, in my opinion, make a square peg fit a round hole and bring parapsychology into the realm of accepted science. It has never happened. You have to be able to replicate things in a lab. You can't necessarily do that with parapsychological phenomena. So I think, again, it's the first day of school. Hopefully, as I say, today's paranormal is tomorrow's science, but I really don't know what we're going to do to define evidence. It's just it's the first day of school, as I say, and it's I don't know what else to tell you. It's just we're going to have to look at this very carefully and be very careful that we don't go off the deep end. Disciplined thinking is important; it's crucial, but disciplined thinking in what way, based on what principles? And when you have ghost hunting groups running around saying we're going to prove to science, you're not going to prove anything to science. So it's early on in that age, I think, and I really don't. I think we have to proceed to new definitions of evidence and new sciences. That's the best answer I can give you.
You hit the nail on the head there, Paul, because for a long time I was saying, and I haven't for a number of months, but I would always try and tell my listeners, the minute a paranormal team says they are conducting anything scientific, they're garbage. They're garbage, and their research isn't worth the paper it's written on. Because the majority of these people, and I don't mean to rip or rag into them, but the majority of these people have not conducted a scientific experiment since probably grade 10 or 11 in high school. So for them to all of a sudden say that they are conducting scientific experimentation all because they are using a phone app is ridiculous.
It's true. I'll tell you what we're doing. We being, my son Ben, Alexander Petikoff, Mark D'Antonio, a real scientist, real astronomer, and we have the casting producer of our show, Lori Greer, is a friend of mine of 45 years, and she's also a practicing behavioral scientist as well as moonlighting as a producer on our show. We are beginning to bring in scientists of her kind and of Mark's kind to catalog data, to look for patterns, to assemble witness testimony on camera, because we've always done that, but we've never had a scientist on the other side of the camera or the microphone. So we're attempting to bring some sort of discipline to all these data, but there is so much of it. The more you look, the more you find. For example, how do you scientifically catalog over 800 police reports from the Litchfield Triangle in Connecticut that indicate public changes in behavior? And now in that flap area, for example, there was a long period of several months actually where people would drive. This is in the middle, well, really 2012, 2013 on to about 2017. people driving on the wrong side of the road in ridiculous numbers, way beyond the statistical probability for the population in that area. When that was noticed in the press and on social media, everything changed. People started driving off the road and hitting trees. That went on for a period. When that was noticed, people started committing suicide in ludicrous numbers. We're going through that, cataloging the data, trying to make it some sort of scientific judgment on it, with the scientists in our group. And we're also going to be working with a number of scientists who are part of the brand new Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. And I'm one of the only people on the research board without a PhD. And these are people of the caliber of Dr. John Klimo, Dr. Sean Esbjorn Hagens, people of this kind, people who study consciousness, physics, and things of this kind. And so we're attempting to bring some scientific rigor to a field that doesn't have any, with scientists who are not renegades, but people who are willing to go outside the box, pardon the cliche, and to work with us on this and to consider new ideas. So maybe this is the path forward when it comes to evidence, and I hope it is, because that's what we're doing.
I got to ask you, in regards to videos, a couple months ago I had Cliff Barackman on from BFRO, and he was talking about the fact that, in his estimation, video evidence of Bigfoot, video evidence of UFOs, because of CGI, hoaxing, you can't trust any of it now. You just can't, unless you catch it yourself for your own storage bank and research bank. Are we at the point now, Paul, where we can no longer trust video evidence?
Well, for a long time now, we've always been able to fake stuff, but it took real skill in the old days. Now anybody can do it if you know how to use Photoshop. For a long time now, I have not trusted any, in the case of photography, any photographs that I have not taken myself, or that Ben hasn't taken, or not taken by someone I trust implicitly, like Shane Searway. Otherwise, you just don't know. Now, I did intelligence photography in the military. Believe it or not, in all my crazy life, I found time to serve in the military, albeit in a reserve capacity. But I did a lot of active duty because of this skill set, particularly during the Grenada, Panama period in the 1980s. The U.S. was involved with, and so I have a smattering of knowledge about what to look for, and how people can fake things and this sort of business. And but in the digital age, that's before the digital age, it's a real problem. So again, I agree. I don't trust any photography or video that's taken by anyone other than myself or someone who's very close to us.
Do you hate the fact that you are now like that?
No. I think that there's enough incredulity about this field. There's enough nonsense going there. There are enough politics and silliness and fakery going on that I think you have to be like that. And if it does help bring credibility to an area of the field that needs it, which all of it does, I'm not sad about that at all.
I actually got into it a couple of years ago. Probably going back 3.5 years ago with Mark D'Antonio over a ghost photo that was taken. And basically he was saying that because he didn't sign off on it, it's not true. And him and I got into an argument. I was like, Mark, you're better than that. You're better than that. I'm not going to put my show reputation on the line for a forgery. And
absolutely,
he must have agreed with me in the end, because he ended up deleting the post, and I respected him for that, because not because I felt like I won. It wasn't a winning or losing thing, but I think it was more about that he understood the point that I was making.
Well, Mark and I are like brothers, and I don't want to speak for him, but I can repeat some of the things he said. He is of course, he's not only MUFON's photo and video analyst, he's our photo and video analyst.
Brilliant,
absolutely.
Man.
And he said, one of the reasons it took us a year to release that UFO video I was describing, that people can find on Facebook, is because we were letting him and people like him vet it. And in the end, he said this was one of the two best UFO videos he had ever seen. And as they say, he will be tortured by inner demons for the rest of his life because he wasn't with us that night when he was supposed to have been. So I think Mark is amazingly honest. He has great integrity, and I love him to death. And he is essential to this field, and I'm grateful that he's working in it. Now, he himself has had multiverse experiences. This is how we first got to know him. We were at a UFO conference in Massachusetts, and we interviewed him when we were still on CBS Radio, and we discovered common ground like I had never imagined. He had been in his lab at one point at his home. He does all kinds of secret work for the U.S. Navy and model building and all. And he said a transparent dog walked into the room. He couldn't believe it. He got up. He actually put his foot on it, and it was a material kind of thing. But the dog ran and knocked him off his feet, and he landed on his, flat on his back. And he began to, as you mentioned, Dave, people who are scientists who have personal experiences, and then somehow realize that maybe they should start to expand the envelope and start taking on some new considerations in their lives. Well, that happened to Mark. And since then, he has been absolutely essential to us in this work, as I say, bringing scientific thinking to this. And I think he's perhaps a lot more open-minded than you might think. But the crazier he gets with his explanation of how this would have to be faked, that's how we judge whether something is really a legitimate photo or not. There's one photo that's in one of our books from the Litchfield, Connecticut case, the original house, and you can actually see two versions of the same room with a membrane in the same photo. And he said, well, you would have had to take glass and shine it through the glass and do this, and this, which nobody in their right mind would even think of to do, at least in my opinion. And that's one of the reasons we decided the harder it is for him to explain, then the more legitimate the photo might be. Plus my own expertise, such as it is, from years of looking at photos that were faked and some that were not. And you do the best you can. We let people make their own decisions.
I have a couple questions from one of our listeners in our YouTube chat room. Sovereign is asking to ask you about the semi-transparent deer. What happened there?
Oh, that was amazing. That was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. That's in our 2017 book I wrote with Ben. I think, I can't remember what's in my own books. It's either in the last one or the one before that, because I've written about it in many cases. The phantom deer of Cortland, New York. That's where that occurred. Now, Cortland, as people know, that's the home of the Cortland apples, full of apple orchards. Well, I had a seminary classmate, who contacted me. This is the late 80s, and I should say the early 80s, and he said, can you come to Cortland? There's something going on you need to see. And I'm sorry, this is late 70s. Okay, there were things like this that happened too. But anyway, he said, come to Cortland. I'm not going to tell you what it is. So I was still living in Connecticut at the time, and I got in my 1968 Ford Fairlane and headed for Cortland, New York, which was no mean drive. It was quite the hike. So I got there, and he still wouldn't tell me what it was. And I got all my stuff. We're going to stay at his house. He said, we have to go out to the orchard at probably about 1 a.m. And so we did. And the first night, 0. And I was ready to kill him. He wouldn't tell me what it was. The second night we went out, he said, be completely quiet. Here it comes. And at the edge of the woods, as again, we were among the apple trees, but at the edge of the woods, there was a light, and then another, and then another. And it came out. We were only about 200 feet away, and they were deer, glowing deer with antlers. It was, I can't tell you the gentleness and the beauty that this conveyed. They came out, they kind of looked around, they put their heads down as if eating, and we both saw this. I took pictures, nothing came out. That's really frustrating. And this went on for about 15 to 20 minutes, and they kind of turned around and walked back. Didn't hear anything. Walked back into the woods. I was absolutely speechless. Now, you hear about animal ghosts and things of this kind, but this was something I'd never heard before. We came back the next day. There were no footprints. There was no scat. There was no evidence they'd ever been there. I had to get back to Connecticut at that point and couldn't stay further. But I said, how did you find out about this? He said, I was camping with my little brother out here, and we saw it. I said, has anybody else seen this? He said, well, not that I'm aware, and I've never heard about it from any other source, and I'm the first one, as far as I know, who's written about it. But it was just an utterly glorious and beautiful experience. I can't explain it, multiversally, I assume, but it was just utterly beautiful.
How did he know? How did he know when they were going to be there?
He didn't. He happened to be out there camping with his little brother.
No, but when you were with him.
Oh no, he said it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and he said that he was assumed they'd come back at the same time. If he saw them again at that point, I'm not aware of it. But he said at first he was very frightened. But then it was immediately a feeling of peace after he'd watched them for about 5 minutes. And his little brother thought it was terrific. He wanted to run over to them, but didn't really work. I mean, he couldn't have run over. They probably would have been scared if they could even see him. So, but he did say that if you aren't quiet, that they will, go back into the woods. And we were very quiet. But as far as I know, he only had that one experience.
Okay.
Prior to that,
follow up from Sovereign is: do you think, Paul, that wildlife are being deposited via portals?
Well, if you want to extend wildlife to include Bigfoot and creatures like cryptids like that, yeah, we've done a lot of shows, particularly with people we really respect, like Linda Godfrey, people of this caliber who believe, as we do, that these are multiversal creatures. Her specialty involves a lot of the canine cryptids, upright canine cryptids, as she calls them. That sort of thing, and the reactions that they have to the presence of people and vice versa. So I think, I think that they do come and go. My own experience, it was September 16th, 2016, in the Pennsylvania Triangle, maybe 75 yards from where we got that UFO video a few years later. And I was in my truck up in the upper field. It was our second expedition to this site, and we have one of our methods is to station people individually around certain areas with lots of cameras and things on certain parts of this very large tract of land. Excuse me. And so I happen to be. You'd think I'd know after all these years. Things do not happen as you expect them to. But we've gotten some interesting pictures of lights in the sky, strange things like that. The previous visit in May. So my cameras were set up for that. All of a sudden, something to my right grabbed my attention. And it was a brilliant moonlit night, a little chilly. So my driver's side window was open, but the passenger side was not. And I looked through the window, and there I could see, I remember the huge legs moving up and down, probably 180, 200 feet away, coming up through this grassy field with its head bowed as if looking for something. And I was dumbfounded, but I was also very peaceful about this. It was a rather beautiful feeling. So I snapped a picture with my infrared camera through the cold window, naturally no heat signature. So I went to get out of the truck very quietly, and my phone rings. And everybody says, turn off the phone, Paul. And in the New England paranormal community, this has gone down as I'll never live it down. It was my wife calling. And so who's going to call me in the middle of a field in Pennsylvania in the middle of the night? Well, my wife would. And my ringtone is the theme from Lord of the Rings, which goes blasting out over the field. And so naturally, whatever it was gone by then. So it was not only was it the closest I ever came to divorce, it was the most amazing experience as well. So right after that, there was a light in a tree across the field. Okay, a tree across the field, and there was... it didn't look paranormal. This looked it looked like a flashlight. So I didn't find out what it was. I didn't want to go barreling in my truck. I didn't know if there was a crevasse that would swallow me or what. So Shane,
I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Fill us in after the break. I'm excited to hear this.
Okay.
We're getting into some weird stories with Paul Eno. After 50 years, you think this guy is in tune with the woo. Let's see if we can bring it out of him next on Spaced Out Radio. I like the fact that I could use hand signals. 10 seconds.
Exactly.
10 seconds.
I'm sorry, when Ben does that, he means 10 minutes.
Oh, no.
I should have seen the time. Of course, it's a hard break. Maybe 13 years on the radio, maybe 14, I'll get it.
Oh, well, we'll get it one day. We'll get it one day. Can you hear the music in the background when it starts playing?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Should I not?
No, I was hoping you could.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So, yeah, a lot of unexpected stuff happens, and there you go. Yeah. Yeah, we always use Skype. One of the best things about radio is you can dress like a bum and nobody cares. But now our station for the last 2 years has put in Skype and webcams, and they send out a TV stream along with the AM/FM. I should say, well, at the same time as the AM/FM signal. So we have to. I put on a tie.
Are you following these social media hearings as Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg are going in front of the Senate?
You can't get away from them in this country.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it just, as I say, I write about history, too. They just remind me of the robber barons of the early 20th century,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I get it, but I don't know. I think they're asked. I don't know. It makes me uneasy. They don't seem to have come after anybody who posts anything paranormal yet.
No, I'm. You know what? I like what they have done in helping clean up a lot of the BS, regarding health information or things like that. But I'll tell you, I really feel that this is something where they're going to get their hands slapped, and if they don't be careful a little bit here, they could get split up.
Yeah, I think the antitrust laws in this country would say that, and they did that with the phone company.
Yes.
Back in the 70s, which wasn't, in my opinion at the time, necessarily a good idea. But again, I get it. I get what they're trying to do on both sides. But the thing is, we're in a new age here. Humanity, at least as Stan Friedman would say, at least for the last few thousand years, has not had a society like this, and we just don't know where it's going to take us and what we should do to kind of keep it under control. Is it going to control us, or are we going to control it, or neither, or both, or what? And we're in new territory, and it's kind of exciting, I think.
I think so too. It's going to be interesting to see what happens because, I mean, never mind, like I have no dog in the fight, but when you start, it doesn't matter whether you're Democratic, Republican, or whatever, when you start controlling one side of what they can and cannot say, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That is very dangerous. And the other side, no matter if they're being supported or not, needs to call that out. Totally needs to call that out.
There needs to be some unity here. I mean, it's I don't know how it got like this. I mean, there seems to be people need to put the country, even the world, ahead of their own political ambitions or agendas or whatever. I don't know. I've never been a very political critter, but you do want to be a responsible citizen. We are taxpayers and all that sort of thing. So
true, very very true. I just feel that. I don't know. I just feel that we should be everybody, whether you're, and I'll use for our American audience, whether you're Democratic or Republican, this is one of those judiciary hearings that you really should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Because if they can control one side that they don't agree with that side politically, imagine what they could do next.
Yeah.
And like I say a lot about the To the Stars Academy, when you control the medium, you control the message.
Yeah, that's right. But all I know is that I'm half Canadian, and all my Canadian relatives watch American politics because the Canadians' politics are so boring in comparison.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, yeah. Well, we raised, our PM raised some ire the other day when he was talking about the global reset. Oh, he's getting ripped a new one up here for that.
Well, I do like his beard.
He's phony.
we don't really like him.
You know, I voted for him. We only got about 10 seconds. The first time he ran, I voted for him. You know, because I thought the Conservative Party was quite antiquated. But we'll get into that. Here we go. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it around here. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on the conversation with Paul Eno tonight. 50 years in the paranormal field, and he doesn't look a day over 35. I'm looking at him right now. I can see him. It's true. Fantastic beard on this guy. He needs some Mighty Moose beard oil, though, to spruce it up a little bit. He totally does. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. Quite the welcome.
Product placement there. You know how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. My friend, you were telling us a story right before the break about, I believe we were talking about portals and everything that kind of goes along with that, whether or not these species are disappearing into different dimensions, animals, Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, this is the September 2016 experience that I had in a Pennsylvania field, and there was Bigfoot. And as I say, I got out of the truck to try and get a photograph of it. My wife called on the phone. It kind of disappeared, and a light appeared in a tree. That's, I think, where we left off. Well, we had a neighborhood meeting. It was our first neighborhood meeting in this area, and that was the following night. And it was at a private home, and I told the story of what happened and showed what the pictures I did have. And a hand went up. And it was a woman named Melissa who lived in a house just on the other side of this field. And she said, that was my son and me with the light in the tree. I said, oh, well what happened? And she said, well, we got back from the store and we heard something big moving through that field while I was seeing it. So she said, and these people are so used to this sort of thing, that they went up with a flashlight to see what they could see. And because it was gone by then, but I said, well, how come you were shining it into the trees? He said, well, sometimes they're in the trees. So the question is, with me on one side and these people on the other, where did this creature go? And adding to that, we did find a track of something very large on two legs that had come through that field. Shane was with me, Shane Searway. We reenacted the whole thing, and that track was there. And it started at a certain point and stopped at a certain point. There were no tracks or anything leading up to it. It just started and ended, as if it had arrived and then gone. Now, the other wrinkle in this area is that this is not a wilderness area. It's farm country. You have woodlots and open pasturage, things of this kind, and open land. The woods are no bigger than maybe 10 acres at a pop. And you've got everybody seeing these creatures. Now, some are less Bigfoot-like and more like orangutans. I mean, this is what we've been told. Shane himself had a sighting and also some experiences at night at his post where we put him. And so the only explanation that we can figure is that they're coming and going through these intersect points or portals, And as I say, last May, a year ago May, we believe we got a video of one of these intersect points or portals, albeit in the sky. So I think, again, it's kind of the first day of school with this. There are people who at the neighborhood meetings who have very similar stories, including of Bigfoot will imitate other creatures, including chickens. So that's another story. But it does seem to be an area where a lot of things can come and go. And I can't see any other explanation. Where else would a large primate like that be living or hiding?
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
And the experiences people are having. It's strange that there are people who claim to see Bigfoot, then all of a sudden something else morphs, or there's another animal around. Like I have one of our listeners, Joe. He lives in California. And he sent me a video this morning of last night. He's sitting in his garage listening to this show. He hears the owls going off, and the owls keep getting louder and louder. And the next thing he knows, he hears a giant bang, and a rock was thrown at his vehicle in his driveway.
Well, yeah, Bigfoot throwing rocks is a common story you do hear. No, I agree. There are all sorts of things that go on, and but the thing that really is interesting to me is that people don't always experience the same thing, even if they're in the same place at the same time. For example, this is common in the UFO field. There will be a apparent craft, or at least a big light going over. Some people will see it, some people will not. Some people will see it in one way, other people will not. Another story that Linda Godfrey told us. She was on the road with Monster Quest, the TV series, and they stopped in a certain Midwestern town, and there was a local history museum where someone said, we have a very interesting phenomenon going on here. And it was an old Victorian house, that sort of thing. And she went down into the basement, and they said that people very often will see orbs here. But other people will see not the orb, but a young man. And other people will see sometimes a lady, while other people are seeing the orb. So Linda saw the orb, but kind of moving across the basement very calmly. But then she talked to people who had seen both the boy and the lady. So I mean, what are we looking at here? I mean, we always believe, as we said in the beginning, that we bring to the experience what we bring to the experience. We don't just sit there like lumps, and this stuff just happens to us. We have we bring ourselves to it. Just if we have time for an example, about 50 yards from where I was having the Bigfoot experience, a little time, well, I guess it was about a year after that, only in the broad daylight, a little girl was coming home from school on the dirt road, just walking, and she had a Bigfoot encounter. Scared her to death. To this day, she won't talk to us about it. She's come to one or two of the neighborhood meetings, and she's kind of just sat there and cried. I mean, the poor kid, she'd feel better if she talked to us. And her parents were very concerned and this sort of thing. My Bigfoot experience was sacred. I felt blessed and privileged. But before I had gone into that field, I had expressed humility and respect for nature and prayed. And I always have positive experiences, especially when I do that. Maybe that's got some relevance. I mean, the little girl, not to denigrate her spirituality or anything, but she just took it in a whole different way, maybe brought something different to the experience that was maybe more negative.
Very interesting, man. Very interesting. I got to ask you, because one of my favorite listeners on Twitter, Derek, he loves the woo. He injects it like he would, for a good high. And it's his birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Derek. Anyways, I'm wondering, for Derek, share your best or most intriguing story about what you have experienced that is just so far out there, nobody would believe it even if it was coming from you.
Okay. Well, in the Bridgeport poltergeist case of 1974, I was working with the Warrens and with a priest, and our assumption was these were demons and the house would have to be exorcised. Right? Well, sometimes the worst things that happen to you are not from the phenomena, but they're things that shatter your belief system. Because really all we have is our belief systems. And I was still in the Catholic seminary at the time, and I thought these were demons. And the Warrens at one point were not there. One night, Ed and Lorraine went out to do a TV interview. Father Charbonneau wasn't there. It was just me. This is on Monday night, the 25th of November, 1974. And the family, which was the middle-aged couple and the adopted daughter, Marcy, who seemed to be the center of this phenomenon. A reporter from the Bridgeport Post, John Sopko, and a neighbor. And we were just sort of sitting there, and I was in the corner of the living room playing Monopoly with Marcy. That was her favorite game. I don't know, a 10-year-old kid wanted Monopoly, but she did. And all of a sudden, the living room began to fill, not the living room, the kitchen down the hall began to fill with almost like this gauzy, smoky substance. And it smelled like ozone. Now, since the minute I stepped into that house, I got the feeling there were 4 entities who were coming and going. And again, I'm 21 years old, like Ed and Lorraine are going to listen to me, right? Because they were convinced it was demons and this. But to me, as in every case, it was always something more to it. And the old ideas didn't seem good enough. Well, at this point, there were 4 entities that came out of that kitchen. And you could, there was a semi-transparent, you could almost see these gauzy structures coming down the hallway. One of them came and stood right in front of me. And when this had started to happen, the little girl and I were saying a prayer out of an old Russian Orthodox prayer book. And I put her behind me because I knew this thing was after her. And it came to stand, it stood right in front of me. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I'd only been at this for a few years in my first poltergeist case. So I pushed against it. And it pushed back. It was physical. It had a body. That threw me for a loop because these are supposed to be spirits, which by definition don't have any bodies. Well, I became fearful. I became angry. And this is where I learned you don't do that in the face of these things because they're parasites. They feed on this stuff and they just got stronger. Well, it got around me. It threw Marcy across the room. And at that point, it felt like the house was going to explode. I pulled everybody out. Fortunately, the police had blocked off the street at both ends of the block, and which is a good thing because there were several thousand people outside this house at any one time because Ed Warren put the whole thing out in the press. So we came out. It was November. It started to sleet, and I had no cell phones in this day and age. I had to go to the next door and use the phone, and something followed me, started pounding on the door, and they thought I was the priest. And I called the Warrens, and it took them an hour to get back into the city because of the chaos created by this phenomenon, and they were only 10 miles away. So by the time we got back, everything had dissipated. But that was probably the second worst experience I've ever had, and because it shattered my belief system. And these things were physical. I didn't know what they were going to do. Was it going to grab me around the neck and kill me? I just, it was, and it felt bird-like. I'm no anatomist, but it just, and when I lecture, I have a graphic with almost like these bird-like structures coming down the hall, and that one standing in front of me. It was completely bizarre, completely unexpected, and totally shattering. So there is one worse than that. I don't know if you want to hear it.
No, let's do it. We're already here. We got 11 minutes before we got to go back to break. Right. We got lots of time. Let's woo it up.
Well, we can scare Derek on his birthday again. I know. Okay, well, this happened in 1973. I was at Wadham's Hall Seminary, right on the Canadian border in Ontario, New York border, the St. Lawrence River, on the American side. And I was working with Father, I don't usually give his name, his real name, because his family wouldn't appreciate it, but he was the exorcist for the Diocese of Ogdensburg. He lived at the seminary, but he didn't teach. And we'd see him sort of gliding down the hallway. But he called me in that month. It was my first semester there. And he said, I hear you've been working with Lorraine Warren. And I said, yes, Father, that's true. And after a number of conversations, he asked me to assist him at the St. Lawrence State Hospital, where he was the Catholic chaplain. But he was also there because weird stuff would be happening. And when stuff would start flying off shelves on the other side of a patient's room, hitting the doctors and the hospital staff, the doctors decided on the hush-hush to call in Father Lawrence. That was his first name. And, this was all hushed up, of course. So he would be looking into possible exorcism cases and performing them when necessary. So my first and worst exorcism that I assisted him at was a young girl called Barbara, October of 73, and obviously several sessions. Sometimes exorcisms can take months, they don't happen easily. And there were all sorts of strict rules among the Roman Catholics about what you had to do. There was the ritual, of course, but there were also preparations to be done. All of us being, there was myself, there was a staff member named Leonard, there was a doctor and 2 nurses, and plus Father Lawrence. Everyone was a devout Roman Catholic. I often wondered if they'd seen this stuff. That's probably why they were devout. They would have to go to Mass and Communion, go to confession, fast, and things of this kind to prepare very seriously for this exercise. Well, young Barbara was 17, drug issues, diagnosed schizophrenic, because she had to get permission because of her age, and her mother was an alcoholic, so she wasn't much use, but she did sign the papers necessary. And we started in on this. Well, the Roman ritual, as it's called, has the exorcism prayers in it. And it's a very lengthy prayer. It involves 3 different exorcisms within the exorcism ritual, that is. At one point, before that, the priest demands that the demon give its name. And during this, when we'd always go back to the seminary, and I would meet with Father Lawrence, and he would say, are you okay? What are your thoughts on this? And I said, well, my first thought is, why do you trust the entity to give its name? And Dave, we give our names to someone. What do? We shake hands, or at least we used to before COVID, because when you give your name, you're giving someone power over you. This is a very, very ancient human concept, and so this is something that Christ did, I believe, 3 times in the Gospels. He would ask the demon to give its name, and he seemed to know all about demons. So the church put that into its ritual. So I said, how do you trust these things? How do you know it's giving you the right name? He said, well, because the power of Christ, binds it to tell the truth. I said, well, okay, and I wasn't about to question him. But in subsequent cases, I swear there have been parasites, as I came to call them, of the same parasite in different cases doing different things with different names. So be that as it may, I was there with the second or third day that we were working with her. It just was kind of a blur because of the horror of what happened. She had, at one point, Barbara had floated out of the wheelchair. Leonard and I had to push her back. Eventually, the nurses had to bind her so she wouldn't float out of the chair, bind her with, soft cloths and things, not ropes or anything. And things like this were going on. Well, at one point, the priest, demanded its name. It said, in a voice that was definitely not Barbara's, Chal, which I assumed was spelled Chall. And she had told us in initial interviews that Chal was the entity, the creature. And when it said that, in my mind, I still doubted the truth, and I said, yeah, right. Didn't utter a word, didn't change my facial expression. The thing apparently heard me, and out it came in a voice, again, the same voice, in a language I didn't understand. Now, I was not allowed to take notes or to record any of this or to take any photographs. The doctor, however, recorded this, and he didn't know, he had to look it up, he said later on. And I never heard any more about this until the end of the year. And Father Lawrence sat me down. He said, Paul, I cannot let you go home this year, this summer, without telling you, without in good conscience telling you what that demon said. And he said that the doctor had to look it up. It was Malay, the Malay language as spoken in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. And he said, the thing said that I was there when your father killed himself. I told him to do it. Oh. Had that been in English, I would have ended up a patient at that, and obviously it took me a long time to talk about this, but you get to a certain age, people have to know these things. And to think that thing would even know, probably downloaded my thoughts or something, but to think that thing even knew about that was just awful. And I don't know what Father Lawrence expected me to do. I think he had hopes that I would be ordained and become, a diocesan exorcist maybe, or at least someone who could talk about this. But I think he half expected me to quit the whole thing right then and there. But I didn't. And I've told that story very few times. I put it in the last book, but that was probably the bottom of the experience for me, the nadir of the experience. Just horrifying experience.
That is getting a little too personal.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
A little too personal. I mean, I don't even know how to even follow up with that, because, look, when you're dealing with that side of the realm, they want to hit you in the emotions. They want to hit you in the soul.
Yeah. And I was 21 years old. It was, talk about not fair, below the belt. But it just, but I learned to deal with it. I didn't believe it. I don't believe anything these things say. I don't believe it was really there. But the fact that it was probably because it was into my mind at some point, and I don't know. Just the worst experience I think I ever had in the paranormal.
How do you recover from that?
I don't know if you do. I still sometimes think about it. I think you recover from it in the same way that you recover from any sort of parasite activity or sort of negative activity. You bring in what Ben and I call it the Peter Pan theory. You think happy thoughts. You bring in positive energy to displace the negative energy. Even Ed Warren used to tell me you have to keep your sense of humor, and we find that humor is a great way to bring in positive energy. I always tell my sons, I brought them up and said, always laugh, but not at each other. Don't keep it positive. And I once got rid of the worst poltergeist I ever dealt with, worse than Bridgeport, by using a joke book. So that's not a technique I would ordinarily recommend in normal circumstances, but in this particular case, it worked. So keeping it positive is good. Even if we're full of baloney in our theories, that's good advice for any family. Keep it positive. Keep the love going. Stick together.
I know that my own feeling with seeing the angel of death in my mother's eyes and then channeling him a couple of hours later.
Really?
Yeah. That is almost the exact same thing. The angel of death actually told me how to keep my mother alive. And it was weird because what you just said triggered that whole remembrance thing, because it was all about love. It was all about, happiness, respect, value. That's what it was all about.
That's everything, along with humility.
Yes.
A word we don't hear very often. And I'm always saying gratitude and humility have to come before anything, even love. I think it's so many people, not to get philosophical here, but so many people, they'll say, oh, my marriage is falling apart. Well, do you love him? Yes. Do you love him? Or do you love her? Or do you love yourself through that person?
Right.
And you think it's love. The whole idea of total loss of self is everything. And that goes against a lot of the New Age stuff. It goes against all the stuff you hear about self-improvement. But, I get into that in some of my writings. I'm big on that. You accept yourself and you forget yourself, because the multiverse is full of paradoxes. What seems right can often be wrong, and what seems wrong can often be right. You find yourself by forgetting yourself. You find yourself in the other, and that sort of thing. And again, full of paradoxes. So it's multiverse living.
That's very true, my friend. Very true. I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we have you for another half an hour. Paul Eno is our guest on Spaced Out Radio. We're just kind of talking the paranormal tonight. Sometimes you just got to kick back, relax, go without a script, and just enjoy the stories from somebody as educated and knowledgeable as Paul Eno. Over 50 years of investigation, and we got him for another 30 minutes on this show. and we're glad that he is staying up late on the East Coast to hang out with us. Paul Eno continues after this. Then we're getting to the thought of the day, the Newswire. We're going to hook up with the Shift in Vancouver and continue on with Hour 3 of the Mighty SOR next. All right, man, we're clear. I'm just going to run my dogs outside one more time. We got like 6 minutes.
Very good.
All right.
I'll stretch my old props, too.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Canada's West Coast.
All right. We'll be
Open
right back.
until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best-rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and we have some cool swag for you to pick up. All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying the stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing.
All right, I'm back. We're just waiting for Paul to arrive. Hey, Bombshell Bomber. How are you? Ooh. All right, I know a number of you have ordered shirts from facebook.com/the SOR Vault. I'm going to be meeting with our T-shirt lady on Thursday to go over them and to start getting orders. And then I will be messaging you all back with the pricing and the shipping, and then we'll get them off to you. So that's what will happen. Once you give us a thumbs up that, yep, you're ready for it, then we'll make the transaction. We get the shirts printed, then we get them off to you. That's how it works. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. As per usual, Paul, I'll get you to, when I say goodnight to you, I'll get you to hold on during the break.
Sure.
Yeah, when is it? It's kind of warm outside. We got about 40 seconds.
Okay. It's not warm here. It's about just about 0 Celsius.
It's 4 Celsius here, 40 Fahrenheit right now. We got a little bit of wind, but tomorrow through Friday, the snow starts again.
Uh-huh. How much have you had so far? Because you're in the mountains.
We've had about 12 inches.
Okay. We've had only 5 so far.
Today melted a lot of it, though. A lot of it.
Yeah.
It was insane. It was crazy. All right. Thank you to Fabster, Lady Bug Bigelow, and Kay Kaylee for the super chats. Here we go with hour 3.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking the time. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. We say hello also to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Palafit. Palafit is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce Paul Eno. This man is a legend on the East Coast when it comes to road tripping around, looking for everything from Bigfoot to UFOs and every ghost in between. He's been in this business more than 50 years. Nothing that he hasn't seen. Paul, do you still get scared?
No, not really. I don't know. Maybe I'm old. But, as you say, I've seen, I think, just about everything, although there was always a surprise around the next corner. But, no, I think keeping a positive attitude, keeping a strong inner positive sense of humility and excitement about learning, keeping it positive really is the best defense. And, it's a funny thing, Dave, we live in a very odd place. Now, Ben grew up here pretty much except for the first 4 years of his life. And we're on a place called Woonsocket Hill in northern Rhode Island, right on the Massachusetts line. And the hill is very, very interesting. It's pretty much a giant ground plane antenna. So you can sit outside with old CB radio and pick up stuff from Indiana and Quebec and everywhere else. Just about, and it's only supposed to work for about 5 miles. So naturally, you're going to have interesting electrical phenomena going on here. There are UFO sightings. All the children in the neighborhood here, and it's not heavily built up, but all the children that Ben grew up with here said never go into the woods at night. Now, because I've gone to the woods at night because I don't care. but he used to work at it's a assisted living facility at the top of the hill, and he would work there. And I said, before you become a radio star, you're going to have a real, a tough job first. And he worked in the kitchen, and he would sometimes decide, and we would pick him up, and it was within walking distance, but he decided one night to come home through the woods, right down to our house at the other end of the woods. And it's a very hilly, rocky, sort of glacial sort of place. And it was getting dark, and it had rained, but he saw rising up from behind a rock what we came to call the Woonsocket Wild Man. And it was a Bigfoot sort of deal, and it rose up and didn't do anything, but he totally freaked, came slipping and sliding down the hill. I remember him coming in the back door, and he was a mess. I said, what on earth happened? And he couldn't talk for a while, and it finally told me the next day. Also, if you look at New England folklore, you will often find a phenomenon known as the Devil's Hole. That's a cave in this hill where supposedly the devil in the form of a wolf would come out, and it's very reminiscent of Quebec folklore. And a priest went and exorcised the place, and this sort of thing. And a lot of Quebec influence around here. We have the sister city of Saint-Hyacinthe in Quebec, and a lot of people are descended from there. A lot of coming and going, a lot of tourism. It's very nice, but we picked up some of the French-Canadian folklore. Also, UFO sightings. We were we got started in 2008 on our show on a Phoenix-based internet station. And then we went to the station we're on now, and then to CBS after that. But on that second show, the power everything went off here. And there was a UFO seen circling a church steeple just maybe half a mile from here, and it knocked out all the power briefly. But we had sort of a glitch in our second show because of that. We came back on later on. But so this area is very, very strange. I think there are portals, and we have, to get back to the original point, we have a lot of protection here. The two of us were in the sunroom of our house. We were like an enclosed porch, and there was the huge brown back. It looked like the back of a grizzly bear or something, walking very calmly past the windows, which were rather high up off our sidewalk up to the back door. And we looked at each other and said, what is that? But we felt, again, very peaceful. I've sat out in that yard in a corner of our property and seen some pretty amazing things. I always put out cameras of the infrared type, and you get the usual animals and little foxes and stuff. But there have been some pretty strange pictures from that too. But we feel they are all guardians and protectors, which I'm very grateful for. We have never had a single incident, paranormally speaking, in this house, except once. And that was when I woke up one night to a shaking bed, and my wife could sleep through the Crimean War, so she didn't feel a thing. I got up, came out on the landing, and there was the sort of a washing over me was the electrical tingle, that sort of thing that you feel in the presence of a world boundary and or the presence of some entity. Well, I took my own advice, said, always, use Occam's razor. The simplest explanation tends to be the correct one. So not paranormal just yet. I took out my EMF meter. It led me right to my older son's aquarium, which was kind of more of a science experiment because he never cleaned it. And the pump on the filter in the aquarium was putting out like 2,000 milligauss, which is high enough to cause a health hazard. And apparently it was high enough to cause infrasound in the house. A standing wave, it turned out, was trapped. And when that occurs, you can, the human eyeball, Ben can tell you because he's a sound expert, human eyeball begins to vibrate at certain megahertz, and you can think you're seeing things or get these feelings. Or the other question arises, do these sound waves open up doors into or portals into worlds that are actually there? I reserve judgment, but I think both may be true. Some poor guy was working late in the British laboratory in 1998, and I can't think of his name offhand, but he had a similar experience. All of a sudden, the beakers on the table began to clink, and the papers began to flutter up and down. And he looked toward the door, and there was like a shadow figure there, and he thought retreat was the better part of valor, and off he went. But it turned out that there was a faulty relay or motor in the ventilating system that was creating one of these standing waves. And, it makes you think you're having paranormal experiences, or it opens intersect points because of the forces involved that allow you to actually see things that are really there. We're still looking at that, but other than that, it's been very peaceful here, and we feel very much guarded.
That's cool that you feel guarded and safe. Do you have a lot of spiritual energy around you to protect yourself as well?
Well, I don't do that deliberately. I guess it's just sort of natural. In the seminary, I learned they don't really teach you meditation. They do spiritually, but I actually made a retreat when I was thinking of switching from the Roman Catholic to the Orthodox churches many years ago at the Trappist Monastery in Spencer, Massachusetts. And they actually used a very Buddhist form of meditation, which I have always used. And this is what the state I'm in when I have meditated and encountered neighbors, parallel world neighbors. And that's in my last book, too, a lot of those experiences that I've never talked about before. Some of whom there's a terrible language gap and communication problem, but they're there anyway. And also for just sort of calming oneself, grounding, sort of becoming one with the earth, and just sort of getting things in balance. And we think that's the nature of the multiverse ultimately. A lot of people come to me, especially with my seminary background, and say, oh, well, God, why does God allow this to happen? This is bad. This is out of balance. Well, maybe it's us and our perception. If you look at the concepts of the multiverse, all outcomes being out there, all outcomes actually taking place in concrete reality somewhere or somewhen, and the simultaneity of all time, if you look at all that, maybe it is a perfect creation. Maybe God is, whatever he, she, it, or them may be, is learning along with us, and maybe it is a perfect in the sense of perfect balance, because everything that is possible is taking place. And we're just not there yet. And if we start to get there, they'll say you're schizophrenic and fill your pockets full of antipsychotic drugs. So that may be a mistake. But again, we're a very young species. And again, it's the first, maybe the second day of school.
It really is. It really is. Paul, as we, time winding down here, we only have about 11 and a half minutes with you. When you look at everything you have studied in this phenomena, do you believe it's all tied together?
Absolutely. And it actually gives me a sense of great peace, because I've met far, far more positive friends, entities, phenomena, scenarios out there than I have negative ones. And I think it's really up to us. One of the terms we invented is super life. And what super life is, in our belief, is that all the facets of ourselves, all the different versions of ourselves throughout the multiverse are really one. And really all of us and all things are one. But I think we have to start with ourselves. And the more positive we make our life and our lives in the multiverse, wherever we are, whenever we may be, the more positive it's going to be for our super life and for everyone. And I think that is as real as it gets. I think that's a reality that's closer to us than we are to ourselves. I think it is ourselves. And so the simplicity, the love, the respect, the humility, cultivate that, and everything else will fall into place. Paranormally and in daily life, or however you want to do it. It's very simple, really. Hard to do, though.
So why do so many people in this field, doesn't matter what they're studying, why do they have such a hard time trying to grasp the concept that Bigfoot may be tied to UFOs and aliens may be tied to ghosts?
Well, I think that in itself would be a start, but I think that we cannot escape our own paradigm, which is based on the island theory, as we call it. Everything we are, everything we have been and will be is contained within our bodies. within our brains, and we are really islands separated from everyone else, which is why it was hard initially to believe in ESP, extrasensory perception, something the Rhines were going after early in the 30s and 40s. And I think once we kind of let that go and realize that it's all a great unity with a capital U, along the lines of the African concept of Ubuntu, and that everything we do affects not only each other or ourselves, but echoes across the multiverse and affects everything, everyone, everywhen, everywhere. And that's a realization that takes time, but you have to start it. Once you start it, it starts to come more and more easily. But to get rid of the island theory, to not believe what we are told, I think when we're sort of de-educated about what we know as children about the paranormal and about reality. Children know this. Our remote ancestors knew all this about the multiverse and about the unity of all things. The paranormal phenomena that you mentioned are just pointers on a map that is the map of our whole existence. And I think that's about the way we have to follow is those pointers and take the lessons that they teach.
I agree with you on that, but the narrow-mindedness and the shallowness of the field combined with social media, this is where it gets a little tough.
It does. Social media, well, as we were saying during one of the breaks, social media, it's sort of a new experience for the human race. Maybe I tend to believe with Stanton Friedman that we have been around the block several times, from stone tools to power tools, maybe 4 or 5 times in the history of this species, maybe more. And I think that, but there's no memory of a time like this with social media, complete and constant contact. And it's a double-edged sword. It has brought, I think, a certain unity to people who at least have access to it than that has been known in our time. But it also has brought, as you yourself were pointing out, Dave, a great deal of misinformation and manipulation and things of this kind that require a great deal of wariness and a sensible approach on our part. So, as with anything, it's a double-edged sword, and depends how we use it. But when it comes to the paranormal, we've got all kinds of fakery going on and all sorts of goofy things that aren't true out there. And it takes a great deal of discernment. And I wonder if that's sometimes even possible. And we did talk about evidence, but that's a slippery slope, as I said. And again, I think it's a matter of feeling our way, but sticking together while we do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the hard part. So who do you trust in this field? Outside of your own team, names out there that people may recognize. Who do you trust? Who does good work?
Okay, well, there may be many, but I only trust the people I know well, okay? I think that there are people like Kathleen Marden. Now, she's thought of as the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, but she's also very into the paranormal realm and works with Ben and I to consult on cases where people have been, for example, abducted and all kinds of negative stuff starts going on in their house, the crossover phenomena, as it's called. I tend to have a very positive opinion of Susan Shepard from West Virginia, whom you may know. We've known her for many years, and many conversations have given me to believe and convinced me that she is a psychic medium with a grounding in multiversal awareness, and I think that's a very, very good place to be. As far as people who are deeply into the field, I really don't have too many others. The people who I find I trust, like Shane Searway, we kind of bring into our circle. There are a lot of possibilities among people. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who has now translated, unfortunately. We were very, very good friends with her. We agreed on 2 things. It's Wednesday, and we're great friends. But her theories tended to be older fashioned, and she liked the Ouija boards, things of this kind, under certain circumstances. But we respected each other, and we respected her integrity and her honesty. I think that's where it has to start. But as a rule, I don't have too many names, I'm afraid, Dave, of people in the strictly the ghost realm or this sort of thing. They're all people who have kind of embraced the larger reality that we've been talking about tonight. I must say, Jason Hawes, whom I really do not know, although he's a fellow Rhode Islander, I was on the air with him, and I didn't know what to expect, but I was very impressed with him. I was impressed with his. He was very articulate, very intelligent, and I don't know if I would agree with much of his theories, but we kind of reached a place where we could agree on some of the basic ideas. For example, he was mentioning a hotel that they were investigating, he and his team, and the quote-unquote ghost kept asking if they were from security. And I said, well, Jason, that's what we get day in and day out. Because we look at it that way. We don't look at them as dead people. If they were dead, they'd be dead. They wouldn't be doing anything, let alone saying anything. So our point of view is these are multiversal things. They're people who are just on the other side of the membrane or many membranes, and he kind of he understood what I was talking about. So whether he would approach it that way, I don't know. But I gained a lot of respect for him that night. John Zaffis. John and I are good friends. I wrote the foreword for one of his books, and we don't agree much on theory either. We both worked with Ed and Lorraine because they were his aunt and uncle. But I'd like to talk with him more and maybe work with him a little bit and see what else he might come up with. But I think he's sincere as well. So there are people out there, and they don't have to agree with me in order to be accepted by me. I just want to see sincerity and integrity.
And that's the hard part right now to find.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And it's too bad. It's too bad because the drama that usually surrounds the social media aspect of the paranormal is really what takes the flavor out of it, isn't it?
I think in many ways it does, yeah. It's just such a mixed blessing, Sometimes not a blessing at all. But no, I agree. It's the tale is yet to be told on that.
We only got about 2 minutes left with you tonight. And, out of everything that you have covered over the 50 years, are we closer to any answers?
I think that maybe we are, but I think we have to change some of the questions because you can't get the right answers if you ask the wrong questions. So I think that's what we're trying to do as well. As I say, in the beginning, you have a question, you think it may be answered, there are 10 more that arise. But I think that if we keep the right attitude, if we keep the unity, we realize that in the end, all will be well. That's my favorite quote from my favorite saint, who most people never heard of, Julian of Norwich from England. All will be well in the end. I think that it really will be. Things will come into balance. There's some evidence that even from the theology of Teilhard de Chardin all the way to the work of Carl Sagan, that all the worlds are coming together, which is maybe why there are so many reported phenomena today, and that there will be a great balance, that things will be well. And I think it's a matter of being simple, of being humble, and sticking together. I really think that's it. But we are, I think, getting there.
60 seconds. Tell everybody where they can find your books, your work, your website, everything.
Okay, well, you can start at behindtheparanormal.com. We're on WOON, AM and FM in the Boston, Providence area every Sunday at noon, along with many of the places you're hearing this show. YouTube later on. Also, we're going to be live on YouTube in a few weeks. Also, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, Paranormal Radio app. And you can get on the major podcast apps, you can get all shows back to 2008. There are over 900 of them. So we're out there.
Busy guy. Paul, it's always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. You're one of the class voices and the class people in this entire genre. And, a lot of people don't understand how difficult that is to find here. But truth of the matter is, you're one of the good guys, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Dave. I can live 6 months on one good compliment, as Mark Twain said. And it's always an honor to be on with you, my friend.
All right, coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, we are going to head to Vancouver. We're going to join up with Shane and The Shift. Going to go right across the country talking about blurry photographs, blob squatches. We're getting into that. Then we got the SOR Newswire and the thought of the day, a jam-packed last half hour of the mighty SOR next. All right, man, we're clear. Good show, Paul. Give you a few claps for that, buddy.
Thank you, Dave. It was worth staying up late. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, you go. You go. Talk to you later, buddy.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right. We know we're going to get that phone call that's going to scare the shit out of me here any second from Vancouver, because that always happens. And where's Shirky Poo here? Where's your news, Shirky Poo? Should be up here. Oh, excuse me. Now we'll grab a couple of stories here, just in case. Grab that one. And 3. Maybe we'll grab one more just in case. That looks good. I think we're good. If we need more, we know where to get them. Hi, Paisley Town. Long time no see, my beautiful friend. Hey, Burrito. Shanna Banana. How are you? Dr. Pharmacy. What am I looking for here? Better text them. I don't have to text them. Yo, Vancouver.
Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio. How you doing tonight, my man?
Dude, I'm actually a little depressed tonight because all my buddies got fired at 11:30 today.
Right, yeah, I saw that news today. It's really bad news, man. It really sucks.
Yeah, I was Bruce Claggett's best man at his wedding.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah. I know it's tough times for just everybody anywhere.
Yep.
Radio.
Yep. How we doing?
But doing good. We're about a minute and 15 seconds from coming back.
All right.
We'll just try and come to you at 36 as usual. Definitely looking forward to some woo tonight.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it, some of it, and I know you, Shane. Is it Shane tonight?
It is Shane tonight. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Cool.
I'm 90 seconds.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, man.
Yeah. We'll chat shortly, Dave.
All right, buddy.
Multitude of places to get your name out there, including
screw with the sound.
Drink show, special promotions, and banners.
There we go.
Receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio.
Screw up the people who are listening to this in podcast.
Chat, live stream videos, and a great form for your post and more. Become
Rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. Dave Scott here in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you for tuning us in. We appreciate it. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Let's go to Vancouver, see if they're ready for us.
It's blue there with the yellow moon.
Hello, Shane.
Check in with Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio.
Big Bad Shane, what's going on, man?
Nothing, Dave. I just kind of hanging out, doing the thing, doing the do, if you will. How's Dave Scott today in the land of the woo-woo?
I'm doing just fine. My beard is getting longer, the snow is falling, and, it's getting cold. So, Bigfoot's on his way to the cabins. Dogman is going to find a hole in the ground. The UFOs are starting to stay away because it's too darn cold here in Canada. But we'll make something happen.
Make something happen. Do you find that? Do you find that the hibernation time does have an impact on these kinds of sightings and stories?
Sometimes. Not so much with the paranormal. Yeah. Ghosts are around all the time. But yeah. I would say that with Bigfoot, I think the creature actually follows the prey. Whether it's deer, whether it's fish, whether it's rabbits, okay, and they're following those tracks. I mean, there's a lot of people who love it when it snows because you can actually follow the tracks a lot easier, which is obvious. But in some cases, with Bigfoot especially, those tracks just seem to end. And I actually heard one crazy illogical theory on our show one night, that the reason why the Sasquatch tracks will just end in the snow is because Sasquatch has the ability to reverse itself and step right back into its own print. Because these people do not want to admit that this creature may have something that is a little different than your normal everyday creature in the forest.
It sounds to me like the kind of scenario where when we were teenagers and we tried to sneak out of the house, and then we realized as we were walking across the yard in the snow, we were going to get caught if we didn't back up our footprints real quick and only have one set of footprints. I mean, sneaking up to see the girlfriend or the boyfriend or in or out of the house, we all learned that lesson.
Oh, yes.
So that sounds like too easy for me, man.
You got that right. You got that right. How you been doing otherwise?
Oh no, things are good, man. We had a hell of a show last night. We got some organ donation conversation that we did last night that we're doing tonight, and with your audience here, we don't have to get into the stories, but with COVID and everything going on in the world, there are people that didn't get transplants back in June that need them because the health stuff was put on hold, and there are people that are worried that they're not going to get their transplants if things get shut down again. So my ask of your audience is very simple, is look, if you've thought about it and not done anything about it, if you haven't thought about it, that's cool too. Just do me a favor, and my ask is please think about it. Please think about it if it's right for you, and decide what's best for you. And I always say, look, donating my body to science part is that's not my jam, but the organs have at her. And so go to your local motor vehicle or however it works in your province if you're in Canada, or if you're outside Canada for your audience with the online. Just go and sign up if it's right for you. Just get it done, put it on the list, and get it done. And the amount of people that get helped by that is amazing. So that's what's on my mind.
Agree.
So thanks for asking.
I've been a 30-year organ donor. So if anything happens,
really,
almost instantaneously when I got my driver's license, I signed up for organ donation.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't until recently.
Really?
And it was after conversation about all this that really got me going on it. So it's really had an impact on me, and it was a pain in the butt. Like, you had the typical government, right? Like, all kinds of paperwork, and it wasn't so easy. You can have the conversation with your family and stuff like that, but if you're not, if you're an adult, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, so go get it. And I know in Alberta, where I broadcast from, they put a little heart there right on your driver's license, so they can see right away that you've volunteered to be a donor.
It is worthy. And when you're on the other side, you still get to be a ghost, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, it's not like you're going to be you're see-through regardless, right?
Exactly. So one of the topics I wanted to get at, you know when your audience, or you, Shane, or anybody in my audience is kind of hanging out and they see something weird and strange, they take a picture, and they're always wondering, why are all those videos or photos of Bigfoot or aliens, why are they always blurry?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest arguments we have in the paranormal field. Why is everything always blurry? And I'll tell you, last week I wrote a blog in regards to a scenario that I had, and it actually ties to the paranormal. So last week I go get my final firewood of the year. Yes, I'm wearing plaid, beard, and the toque. Have to. It's Canada. And exactly, you have to play the part. And so as my buddy and I are driving into the forest, literally about 50 feet in front of my truck, a beautiful, giant, biggest cat I've ever seen that close up and personal, a lynx, jumps right in the middle of the road. And if you've never seen a lynx, literally, they are the most beautiful cat ever. Ever. And this thing is standing there right in front of my truck. And my brain is saying, grab your phone, take a picture. Grab your phone, take a picture. Well, gee whiz, guess what happens? I literally go all thumbs. This beautiful cat is standing right in front of me, 30, 40, 50 feet now, because I drove up a little bit when I hit the brakes. And I can literally see this cat looking at its nails, wondering, are you going to take the photo or what? Finally, he gets frustrated because I'm getting a little bit of a clamp, You got me?
Did we lose that connection?
You got me now?
I think so. I'll try and call contact Dave again and see if we can get him back on here.
All right, thanks, Manny.
All right.
To Dave's point,
I guess they lost our connection. That is kind of weird. We'll see if they call again. Hopefully they will. Let's call them. All right, you guys. Oh, that's definitely not them. Let's go here. All right, you guys got me now?
Yeah, I've got you now. I'll put you back up into the mix.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No problem.
What occurred to me was, oh my God, I can't take a picture of this. My dad's going to be mad. And also, oh my God, are you okay? And so it's interesting, that perspective, Dave, when you talk about the things that go through your mind when you try to grab the camera or grab that picture. We lost you just when you were saying how you were grabbing your picture and fumble fingers.
Absolutely. And so here I am getting the fumble fingers. This cat is literally getting irritated with me because I literally cannot get my phone to work. So, and of course I have one of those iPhones where you use your thumbprint to unlock it, and my thumbprint doesn't work. Siri pops on. Everything starts going haywire. The cat decides, well, I've had enough. I'm leaving. So it goes into the ditch beside me. I kind of pull up on it, and it's just standing there. And I open my window, and I literally say, hey, puss, do you mind if I grab a photo, please? And the cat stood there. Let me take a photo. But, of course, having an iPhone with a crappy camera, I get this blob squatch standing in the bush. And I can tell it's a lynx, but I got people, when I put it on social media, who basically say, can't tell what it is. So the whole point of this whole story is this. We have some people out there who are getting some incredible experiences walking through the forest, maybe with their dogs or going to their favorite secret fishing hole or something along those lines. And the next thing you know, there's a Sasquatch there, or there's a dog man around, which hopefully it's not a dog man because that's kind of scary. And when we talk about all of these photos being blurry, it's because of the human anxiety of not wanting to miss that moment that we aren't getting these beautiful pictures of what could be some amazing evidence about the strange world around us that truly does exist. So it was a good, non-scientific lesson that I learned, and it makes so much sense as to why this in our field is happening all the time.
I'm going to challenge this because you can correct me if it's wrong, but this is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
It seems to me that we haven't had new photos of a Sasquatch in a long time. And there are more cameras around, albeit fumbly thumbs like you trying to take the picture. We've got cameras everywhere now.
Yes.
And we don't seem to be getting new images. What's the reason that you think behind that?
The biggest issue, that's actually an easy question. The biggest issue is nobody believes it anymore. Nobody believes it. Researchers do not believe it. The Bigfoot people don't believe it. The alien people don't believe it because CGI and people looking for an instant clickbait video that's going to make them a ton of money by putting on a fancy title on YouTube is what's killed it. You can't trust anything. And that's the sad part of this field, because that perfect evidence that you are asking for could be out there, and we just haven't seen it. Or maybe it's already been out there, but you get the people in this field where they know everything about everything, they don't buy it, and therefore you're considered a hoaxer. And that's where the issues start. How you get evidence, nobody knows. Like, I can tell you right now, and I know people on my side hate it when I say this. If I had the picture-perfect video or photo of Sasquatch, even though I do what I do, I don't know if I would release it to the public because the scrutiny would be horrific. The vengeful people out there, or that hide behind the term skeptic, would rip it apart, and you'd be like, dude, this thing just killed my wife, my children, and my dog right in front of me, but here I am, I got that picture right before it happened, and they'd be like, fake blood, fake scene, fake dog, man in gorilla suit. And that's what you'd have to go with, and you'd get labeled. And like I said, I get in trouble a lot for saying this because I am in the medium, but my advice is to people is if you have the smoking gun video, or whether it's of UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, send it to proper investigators and keep it out of the public, because the scrutiny that you will receive is absolutely horrific. I mean, the greatest film of all, Bob Gimlin and Mr. Patterson with the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film, that's going back 53 years now. And they are still torn apart by the Bigfoot community. They didn't make a dime off the video. Today, they still wouldn't make a dime. Nothing is copywritten. Bob Gimlin, Roger Patterson's passed away a number of years ago. But Bob Gimlin just, I believe, celebrated his 92nd birthday or something along those lines. And he's even said that if they would have known that this would happen, it ruined his life. Absolutely ruined his life. The people who don't believe anything will basically call you crazy and nuts. The community that you submit the video to will literally tear you apart until you're emotionally stressed out over it. So my advice is, there's a lot of good researchers out there. If you have the smoking gun video or the evidence, take it to one of them and keep quiet for your own sanity.
Okay, so how do we do that, Dave? I mean, to me, that sounds like politics.
It does.
In that, why would anybody want to be a politician? Because you're just going to get torn apart. But I mean, you've got to get it out there somehow. And I mean, how do you know that these organizations aren't going to get beat up the same or release your name, and then it's still going to happen?
Well, there's a lot of trustworthy people out there. Okay, like let's say I had a Bigfoot video. All right, the first person I would probably send it to is a good friend of mine in Pennsylvania named Butch Witkowski. He's been doing this for 30 years. He has over $100,000 in technical gear that he's invested in, including he can tell whether or not a photograph is faked, a video is faked. All right, that's the first person I would send it to. I would then send it over to somebody like David Paulides from the Missing 411 Project, who last year at this time put out Missing 411 Canada. Fantastic book, by the way. I would submit it to him. There are a couple other researchers I think of. A guy named David Weatherly, who has researched up here in British Columbia. He's from Las Vegas, but he's a phenomenal researcher. You look for the people who aren't seeking the press. You look for the people who are not, trying to use others in order to make a buck off of them. And this field is a dime a dozen like that. And that's what you need to look for. And, worst case scenario, you call me. You hit me up on my website, and you just say, look, I want this reviewed by quality people. We're going to direct it in that way. We really will.
There's a text here, Dave, that I'll throw at you from Alexandra. She says, have there been stories of Bigfoot injuring anyone? An indigenous elder I know talked of communicating with the Sasquatch.
Hi, Alexander. Nice to meet you, even though you sound like Shane. No, I'm gonna put it this way. I have heard stories down in, I believe it was the 1930s, that there were gentlemen out of Washington State, right at this area in, they call it Ape Canyon at Mount St. Helens, way before Mount St. Helens ever blew up. And these hunters went and shot at this group of Bigfoot, hitting one. Well, these Bigfoot didn't like it too much, and they chased the hunters back to their cabin, and for the next 24 to 36 hours, these hunters inside were being terrorized, had every window barricaded, had every door barricaded. The Sasquatch were throwing boulders and rocks on the tin roof in order to try and get in. There's some story about whether or not the Sasquatch actually jumped on the roof to try and pound on it with their feet, and these guys were terrorized. And then all of a sudden, everything went silent, and they all disappeared. They got the heck out of there. Locally here in Canada, I do know of a story from the Chehalis First Nation over by Harrison Hot Springs, where a lot of First Nations, especially in British Columbia, always tell young women never to go out alone at night because you could potentially become a Sasquatch wife. And apparently Sasquatch is always...
We're going to have to leave it there,
yeah,
Dave.
Darn it.
We're just out of time. You know what? Well, let's keep it on the queue, man. We got lots to talk about always. And those stories are the best. Thank you for being on the program again, Dave. I love it.
Every time, my friend. We'll talk to you next week. All right, everyone. You know what it's time for on our end? It is literally time for Captain Shirk to come out of the darkness and into the news light. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR News Wire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the lessons learned. Hey, you know what? About a year ago or so, there was a big outcry here in Canada because Heinz ketchup pulled out of Canada. Not the product, but creating the product. I tell you, every Canadian tried to switch over to Fletch's and other types of ketchup, and it just wasn't the same. Heinz apparently realized that Canadians eat a lot of ketchup and decided they put a brand new facility coming back to Ontario and to Montreal in order to make ketchup in Canada once again. I guess they finally realized that our tomatoes are very, very ripe and very delicious, and Canadians put ketchup on anything. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. Tell me about your weirdest communication with a spirit. Oh, we got to make some short ones here. Let's go to Kara. Last year I was reading my late grandpa's memoirs and learned a great deal about him. Seemed like a pretty cool guy, and as it turned out, I found out he was buried in a cemetery in Chamberlain, which is about half an hour from where I live. So I went out there and took a Sunday drive, hanging on out, looking at it. About 20 minutes after walking around, still couldn't find the graves. Well, what are the chances that there are two cemeteries in such a small town? Not likely. Pretty small. The GPS started acting up, getting all crazy of sorts. Somehow we missed it and had to turn back. As we turned the car around, there, right on the right side of the road, a little graveyard. To my excitement, it looked like it had, in my mind's eyes, a small little graveyard surrounded by a single row of trees. And sure enough, we go in there, and there's my grandfather's grave. Fantastic story. See if we could sneak in one more. Matt, otherwise known as Cable Guy Matt around here. It's about Ouija boards giving us fake winning lottery numbers. Yeah, what's with that? What is with that, Ouija? We need an explanation. Please spell it out for us. Thank you to everybody taking part in the Thought of the Dave. I apologize we couldn't get to too many of them, but we'll do it all again tomorrow on Facebook and on our Twitter page, so make sure you check it on out. Big thank you to Captain Shirk for the abbreviated Heinz ketchup story, because us Canadians can't live without our ketchup. And, of course, to our guest tonight, Paul Eno, for all of his paranormal smarts hanging on out with us. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everybody participating in our chat rooms on Spreaker, YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Facebook, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, say it with me, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the WOON train has docked for the night. But tomorrow, my friends, we're going to ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yep, we got room for them too. Good night.